Welcome to the Struggle Bus Family Podcast, where we share real stories from the messy, beautiful, exhausting, and joyful world of caregiving. We're here to build a community that supports, educates, and uplifts caregivers and families of individuals with disabilities and complex needs. Whether you're a parent, sibling, educator, or just someone who loves a caregiver, there's a seat for you on this bus.
Welcome to the Struggle Bus family. We created this podcast because caregiving can be isolating, but it doesn't have to be. We believe that by sharing our stories, we create space for connection, healing, laughter, and maybe even a little hope. Hi, Johnny.
Hey, Jess, how you doing?
Doing well. How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm glad to be back in the saddle, so to speak. It's been a few weeks, I think, few weeks since we've done this, and I think we're both kind of dusting the cobwebs off the podcast corner of the brain a bit, but
I think so. I had the jitters today.
Oh yeah, uh-oh. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, well, hopefully we can do this in one take then. Maybe not. So today I figured we'd talk about Eric and a recent trip to the ER in the middle of the night that happened. But first, we just had our first ever in-person family meetup this past weekend. And I thought it was great. I mean, how did you think it went? Let's start on the positive. What was the biggest, not that there's going to be a negative. What was the biggest win in your opinion?
New friends.
Yeah.
For our kids and for us. And I think we achieved the goal that we set out to, which was to create space for other parents like us or who face, similar situations or very different situations, but all within the same realm of special needs.
Yes.
And, was pleasantly surprised because I did not go into it with any expectations. In fact, I overslept, but we don't have to point that out. And we went into it with an open mind. It wasn't overdone. We didn't overplan.
Yeah.
And I thought it was really fantastic. What about you?
I totally agree. I mean, for me, it was like if someone besides us shows up, hey, check success, right? Mm-hmm. And the fact that we had as many families as we did come out and kids ages 3, I think, was the youngest, and 22 was the oldest.
Yeah. And this as well as I do, it takes courage, to go out, especially, with your crew, it's 5 kiddos. Right. And it's not like one isolated play area. So you're kind of constantly looking in every direction, which we can joke about,
now.
Who
we can joke about now.
Taken off a couple of times, but no, it's, it does take courage, and you're not only putting yourself out there because you're meeting up with people you've never met before, but you're also potentially bringing the kids to an environment they haven't been in before. Right. Which the particular place that we went to, there was a splash pad and like a jungle gym area for both little kids and bigger kids. So it was the perfect space. But, I'm really proud of our parents that came. Yes. I'm proud of all the kiddos that went. Everyone had a good time.
Yeah, I agree. And especially considering it was a public park. We didn't have it reserved in any way, shape, or form. There were at least 2 birthday parties happening around us. So lots and lots of people, lots of sensory input and stuff. And everyone did great.
Yeah, I think so too. I actually can't wait until we do our next one, but I'm also super excited that we made a friend who is going to come out and meet us this weekend.
Yeah, with her son too, right? Yeah, yeah, that's great. I mean, I think that just goes to, I think that validates. I mean, we've got experience with this because we've been having these conversations, with all of you guys and ourselves, for a while now. But I think it validates, kind of the idea that being a special needs parent or caregiver is isolating,
Mm-hmm.
right? And to your point, it takes courage to get out of the house or your kind of safety bubble, if you will.
Yeah.
And the fact that so many parents did that, and even though they had expressed ahead of time in some cases that I'm worried about how my son's going to be in this environment, with the other
Yeah.
smaller kids and those sorts of things, and everyone did great.
I do have a couple call outs though. As you were talking, I was thinking about some of the similarities between the families, and on the note of getting out of the house, we all have our homes set up so that our kids can be free and safe
Yep.
in our own homes. So if you're not familiar with kids with special needs, or and our kids all had some things in common and some things that were very different.
Yeah.
But to go into an uncontrolled environment where there were so many unpredictable factors and things, it's just, it doesn't seem like it should be a big deal, but it is a big deal.
Yeah.
It is a big deal, and we're just really, really thankful that people did come out. The other thing that I was thinking of that I totally spaced on. Oh, where are the dads? So we have an episode dedicated to this, but where are the dads?
Yes,
so
yeah.
kudos to you moms for getting the kids
It
out
was
coming
all
out.
except for yours truly. I think it was all moms.
Mm-hmm.
Yes,
It was.
Yeah.
So I thought that was interesting and kind of true to nature, as you mentioned on an episode previously.
Yeah. Where are the dads?
Where are the dads? Yep.
I mean, I know dads are busy, but come on, guys, you got to represent too.
That's right. So do you think we will do it again?
100%.
Yeah, me too.
In fact, I mean, we're gonna meet one of the families we met at the meetup last weekend. We're gonna meet one again Saturday with our respective crews and hers. So I was gonna say, yeah, 100% do it again, and we can't do it soon enough. But I guess we're kind of doing one this weekend. But I mean,
Yeah.
I can't wait to do a larger one.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I hope we have even more folks come out.
Me too.
So stay tuned. You heard it here first. We're putting it out there. We're committed to another one. Keep us honest. Don't let it go in a year, 3 or whatever before we do it again.
Yeah, right.
So, all right. Well, let's move on and talk about Eric in a second here.
All right.
So last week, Wednesday, Eric started having these weird. It was mostly head movements, and I'll see if I can drop in a video clip of it that I took at the time. But just really weird kind of head bobbing, gyrations type of thing, and occasionally it would be his arms, legs, his hands would do these kind of weird extreme type movements.
Yeah. Was it like flexion or? Just it didn't seem like he could control it, and they were jerky, right?
Yeah, very much involuntarily. It did not seem like it was bothering him. Like didn't seem like he was in distress or pain or anything. But it was very much. It wasn't like bobblehead loose either. Like when we jumping ahead, when we finally got to the ER of the hospital and he's sitting on the hospital bed in front of me, I kind of put my hands on his shoulders and his head, locked to the side like it had been all day, and it pinched to the point that it hurt my fingers between like his collarbone and his jawbone. So it was like the muscles were definitely like tight. But anyway, so that was going on for I think the most of the day Wednesday. I wasn't there for the majority of it. I saw it from probably like late afternoon, early evening, and as soon as I saw him doing it, it was concerning to me, because it definitely wasn't normal. But not knowing what was going on and like I said, he had been that way apparently from what I'm told all day long anyways. I'm like, okay, well, I'll keep him with me tonight and keep an eye on him.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think it wasn't until maybe midnight or 1 in the morning where I checked on him, and he was like in a ball on the floor doing it.
Oh,
And I'm like, okay, we're going to the emergency room.
yeah,
Right.
that's scary.
Yeah. So I had someone come over to be able to watch the rest of the kids. Took him to the ER, the same one you ended up taking Avery to that one time. So it was a good probably 30-minute drive, but in our area at least, that's the one that's got staffing 24/7 for all the various things.
And as far as you know, between the time that we'll say that you noticed it or you got home and saw that until the time you took him to the ER, there were no breaks in this.
No, yeah, good call. So yeah, this was continuous.
Okay.
It wasn't. I mean, I guess it could be a seizure, although neurology said it wasn't. I don't think it was either. It wasn't like this. These were not episodes. Like it would happen, then it'd stop. It would happen. It was continuous.
Mm-hmm.
So we get to the ER, and they took us in pretty quick, and then we sat and sat and sat and sat. I mean, to be fair, we did show up at like 1:30 in the morning type of thing. But I mean, it was. I mean, the movements were unusual for him. Well, for anyone, I'll say, but especially for him. He would stay stationary, or like he would sit with me and hang with me, you know, as long as I let him, which is unusual for him too. I mean, he's normally, all over the place,
Yeah.
moving around, always doing something. Generally does not like to be touched or held. And here he was sitting either next to me or in front of me or laying on me or whatever, continuously doing this thing.
And aside from that, I think you said he was tending to be a little less social or less interactive than normal, right?
Yeah, I mean, it was. You could still. I don't know how else to explain it. Other than you can still see Eric and his personality in there somewhere. Like you could wave and he'd wave back. You could say, whenever you would say, Eric, are you cute? He'd do this like type of thing, put his hands face and do this. He would still do those things or try and do those things, but he's just doing this like. I mean, the best way I can describe it is Parkinson's, right? I mean, that's
type movement.
Yeah, I mean, because it looked like that, and it was continuous. Like I said, it did not stop. So just in general, it was not normal behavior for him. And then, like I said, when I checked on him and saw him on the floor, I mean, he was awake. He was awake on the floor, but curled up in a ball, convulsing, twitching, whatever you want to call it. Like, okay, we're out of here, right? I mean, and when we got to the ER, the nurse is like, okay, well, we'll have to wait and see what the doctors want to do, but we're probably going to end up trying to do collect a urine sample and a blood sample so we can do some tests. And I'm like, okay, well, he hasn't had anything to drink since this afternoon, and this is 1:00 in the morning, mind you now. He hasn't had anything to drink since this afternoon, and likewise, he hasn't had any wet diapers since then. So I'm like, well, if you're going to want to collect urine, let's get one of these collection bags on him now, so that if he does pee, then you've got that. Because especially considering, in my mind, I'm thinking to what's hopefully going to happen in the matter of a couple hours. When they would want to do an MRI, especially since he hasn't eaten in a day, basically. Oh, that was the other thing. He hadn't eaten all day long.
Which is not totally uncharacteristic, but somewhat, right?
Well, I mean, Eric doesn't sit down and have meals, but he does graze. He will, if there's food out, he will walk up to it and grab a bite, type of thing, throughout the day. But yeah, he won't sit there and like, oh, I'm going to have breakfast or I'm going to have dinner or whatever. Typically, that's not how he works. But To not eat anything all day long, like just nibble wise, to not do that all day long is unusual for him.
Yeah.
Um, so so yeah, I mean, I mean, the whole ER experience. I mean, it was okay until we got to the part where they wanted to do the IVs. I think for me at least,
Mm-hmm.
right? I mean, he's already kind of out of it and tired because his muscles have been doing stuff all day long. Um, and they're like, okay, well, we need to do an IV, and I'm like, okay, we can try that. It's not going to be easy. So they gave him I can't. It was the options were either the nasal or a drink, I think, and
Mm-hmm.
the anesthesiologist said the drink didn't taste good. So I'm like, well, that's probably not going to work, right? Especially if he doesn't eat or drinking much all day
Mm-hmm.
long. So we did the nasal thing. I can't remember what it was called.
Versed.
Versed. Thank you. Yes,
Mm-hmm.
that's what it was. Which he hated, but he did it. And then he kind of dozed off after 10 minutes or so, within 10 minutes, which is what they said to expect. So um, they come in to do the IV, and it's four of them and me, and
Oh
he
my
and
goodness.
he's sitting, basically in my lap on the hospital, like laying back on my chest asleep. And so I kind of bear hug him. The nurse is going to do IV, takes his left arm, checks out both arms, but ultimately decides on the left. And she's gonna work that while the other three people hold his other his the right side of his body and his legs and feet. Okay, so and I'm thinking, okay, well, he's out cold, so this will be easy, right? No, as soon as that needle pierced the skin, he was like 100% awake.
Wow.
And for a kid who had been mostly, I'll say, lethargic, just because he wasn't roaming around the house and doing stuff like he would normally would be, he was not only wide awake, but he brought every ounce of strength he had. I mean, there were five adults, including myself, trying to hold him still for this IV. And
And our kids are impressively strong.
yes, yeah, yes, yeah. If you were to feel Eric's torso on a normal day, I mean, he's like a snake. It's all muscle under that skin, right? Um, yeah. So I mean, she couldn't do it. She couldn't do it. I mean, she got it in. She thought it was in, and he's still squirming around. So you see the IV tube like twisting around, sticking outside his arm, twisting around. I'm like, I can't handle this. Um, and she would back it out and do this thing where she'd back it out and try to put it in, and ultimately she gave up. Um, and then we let him kind of calm down a bit, and they're like, okay, well, we're gonna try again. And I'm like, no, you're not. I'm not gonna let you do that again. Um, so then they tell me that, like, well, the hospital, we want to admit him. Neurology has reviewed kind of what he's doing, and they agree he should be admitted to the hospital, but the hospital won't take him and admit him until he has an IV in place from the ER, which seemed a little odd to me, but
Yeah.
okay. Um, and I still protested, or maybe more PC, advocated
Yeah.
that, because he had, I mean, to give you some background, the Friday, so this was Wednesday, the Friday before, he had been at the same hospital for a bunch of dental work under full sedation.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and they didn't have these challenges with the IV because they had given him some sort of gas that's basically, I mean, not laughing gas, something more potent than that basically puts him to sleep and all that kind of stuff. And then they had placed the IV and all that after that. So I kept saying, we're not going to do that again. You're going to just do whatever you guys did last Friday, because that worked, right? Not only did it work, but it didn't put him through this
Right.
this experience, right?
Yeah.
And they sent the doctor into the room to talk to me, and like, the irate parent in the middle of the ER, type of thing. And so ultimately I reluctantly agreed for the second attempt, but I told her, and if I'm looking, if you're her and I'm looking at you, I'm like, you can try this again, but you're not going to do a third time. Period. End of story. You're not going to do it a third time if you can't do it this time. You're going to figure out a way to get him admitted to the hospital without a fucking IV in his arm, and they'll take care of it. However they did it last Friday.
Yeah.
Right. So they came in a second time. This time it was just 2 nurses, not 4, which I think helped. He was a little. I mean, he still struggled and fought, but not as much as the first time. I don't know if it's because there was only 3 of us instead of 5 of us. Because that's pretty daunting. You're a 50-pound, and that's the other thing. He's 50 pounds, and 5 adults couldn't hold him still.
Yeah.
Right.
One, who would think that 5 adults for a child that doesn't like to be touched and doesn't like,
yeah, go figure.
Like,
right?
Let's put 5 people in there with him.
Yeah, really. So I mean, like with the 3 of us, he wasn't as, his anxiety level wasn't as high. And I don't know if it's because there was just 3 of us instead of 5 of us, or because he was totally exhausted already from the day and that first attempt. But ultimately, the second attempt wasn't successful either.
Mm.
So, lo and behold, we were admitted about 30 minutes later. We didn't have a room or bed yet, but we were admitted about 30 minutes later without an IV, magically. In retrospect, I think I'll just, I hope I never have to go to the ER with any of the kids ever again, but I think next time I'll be just like, no, thanks. We'll wait for the IV until we're admitted.
Yeah.
And when they protest, they'll be like, well, then figure out what you guys did that one time or those 2 times. Because they ultimately did get an IV the next day in the hospital part, not the ER. But do whatever you do. Or I need to see what they did. I need to figure out what they did, find out what they did, and say, if we're going to do an IV, this is the process you need to do with this child.
Yeah, and it's not. It isn't that we're against protocol or hospital policy.
Not at all.
But when it's unnecessary, when you're putting him through unnecessary stress and a situation that's not great for anyone, and there's no real reason to do that at the time. Like, I'm surprised he even left the IV in, to be honest. I would have assumed that he would have.
I don't think it was in long enough for him to. We'll get to that, but I don't think it was in long enough for him to pull it out. I mean, he started fussing with it by the end of the second day, but.
So did his symptoms change from the time you arrived at the hospital until you were admitted or on into the next morning?
No. Well, by next morning, yes. Okay. Well, morning is relative, right? So we got there at 1 a.m. or so. I was up obviously all day Wednesday, all night Wednesday, and all of Thursday too. So morning depends on what time morning, right? So by 10, 11 o'clock on Thursday morning, he had improved. He wasn't better. He had improved. Mm-hmm. Okay. And the other odd thing is when he'd be asleep, like because he was exhausted when put him in the car to drive him to the yard. He was already exhausted. So I'd be driving and I'd be checking the rearview just to make sure he was like, okay. Mm-hmm. Right. And I could see him in the 5-point, seat, doing the thing he's been doing all day, but he would doze off. And not knowing what was going on, I didn't want him to sleep. Right. Because it's like, okay, I don't know what's going on. If he falls asleep, does that mean he's going to stop breathing, or what's going to happen? So I'm driving on the freeway, so I'd be reaching back and shaking a leg, tapping him, whatever, saying his name to get him to wake up, and he would wake up. But the interesting thing is when the 2 times that he fell asleep in the car, and when he'd be asleep at the hospital or in the ER, the body movements wouldn't be happening. It's would not. It's only when he was awake or conscious that it was happening. Okay. And then, like I said, to answer your question, by about 10 or 11 the next day, it was still happening, but not as severely. It was. I mean, instead of his head kind of going all like to the extremes, it was more of like this type of thing. Um, so we were waiting. We'd been admitted. We got into a room probably about 30, 45 minutes after being admitted. Um, I think it was actually the room next to the room Avery was admitted to in the hospital, oddly enough. So I kind of knew my way around a bit already. But I mean, it was just more waiting. I mean, neurology had said they wanted to do an MRI. I made it clear that he hadn't eaten anything since 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock Wednesday morning, and now we're here, morningish, Thursday morning. So it's like he hasn't eaten in 24 hours. We're gonna sedate him for this thing. We can do it right now.
Yeah.
Right. He hasn't eaten anything, or had anything to drink. But the MRI didn't get scheduled to be until 1:30 in the afternoon. And I mean, I guess it's a good thing he didn't have any appetite because he couldn't eat until then, right? Because we know he's going to go into it and get sedated and such, and he can't eat. They did agree to give him some apple juice, which he readily chugged, which was good because at least he's getting something. And he looked. I mean, that Wednesday evening when I saw him for the first time like this, he was pale. He looked thin, which Eric is already thin. I mean, he's 12 and he weighs 50 pounds. But yeah, the MRI wasn't until 1:30, and when that finally came around and we went to wheel him down to imaging. I made a point of talking. I mean, the anesthesiologist and all the people, right, come individually to talk to you and say, "This is what we're going to do. Do you have any questions?" That sort of thing. When the anesthesiologist came around, I made a point of asking, "Well, how are you going to do this? Because this has been our experience so far." He was here Friday last week. We've purposely been waiting for the sedation for the MRI to do the IV, and likewise do a blood draw because we haven't done any labs or anything up to that point, right? Because I mean, probably a story for another time, but all the blood draws with Eric have been disasters too. I mean, to the point where I'm laying on top of him on the table, like holding his arm out here while they try 5 or 6 times to stab him and get a line or get a vein. So I mean, he did a fantastic job of explaining it, with the gas, and I'm like, well, and he made a point of saying, it's not just nitrous or laughing gas. This is what it is. This is how it affects you. And I'm like, okay, that sounds good to me. And he did clarify too, since I'd mentioned the dental sedation at the same hospital the week before for Eric. He's like, yeah, this is if that's what he was doing here, then that's the protocol they would have followed for that too. So I'm like, good, let's do that. Sign me up, right? So they did the MRI, they got the IV, and they brought him back up. They called me down to recovery after the MRI about an hour and a half after, because they had to do the MRI, they had to sedate him, they had to do the IV, they had to do the blood draw, then they had to do the actual MRI itself. So it was about an hour and a half before they called me down to recovery. And he started waking up about 30 minutes after that, and we went back up to the room, and at this point he could finally eat. So it's like, okay, well, Eric, do you want this? Do you want that? And he opted for, his usual chicken tenders or nuggets or whatever and French fries. And he ate for the first time in a day and a half, which was great. I mean, not much, but he ate, right? And by now, this is like probably 4 o'clock or so, 3:30, 4 o'clock in the afternoon on Thursday. And the unusual body movements had kind of all but stopped at that point. I mean, there's still some, but it wasn't anywhere near what it was the day before, the night before, even that morning. And one of the things I had immediately thought of Wednesday evening when I saw him was the medications he's been taking. Because one of the medications in particular, methylphenidate, his developmental pediatrician and I talk about his weight regularly. Every visit, we talk about his weight because he's small for his age, right? He's underweight for his height, even. Forget his age. He's underweight for his height. And you can't be on this medication if your weight isn't up to a certain threshold, right? So when I walked in the door and saw him doing this, and he looked pale and thin and everything to me, I'm like, well, I'm going to weigh you. I mean, I don't even know why I thought of it, but because he's convulsing and stuff. But one of the first thoughts was, I'm going to weigh you and just see what you weigh, which seems unusual in retrospect, but it just popped in my head. So I weighed him, and he was 52 pounds. And January of this year, he was 58 pounds. And he's had several appointments since then, because these kids all have kind of a regular cadence of doctor's visits, right? And he had gained from that 58. So I'd have to go back and look and see how high his weight was ultimately last month. But I do recall the developmental pediatrician being content or happy with his weight gain progress, because he was a steady ramp up, and he's taking another medication to increase his appetite too, on purpose, so he eats more and gains weight. But so the fact that when I weighed him Wednesday evening, he was 6 pounds lighter than he was in January, and knowing that he had gained weight from January until at least May, June of this year, it's like, okay, well, something's not, this isn't adding up. So he's lost weight. We had just increased, he takes methylphenidate twice a day. We had just increased the afternoon dose from, just doubling it essentially, because we're seeing an uptick in certain behaviors in the afternoons. And that was probably about almost a month ago, before this all happened last week. So my thought was like, okay, is it related to the methylphenidate for some reason? And again, I don't even know why these thoughts popped in my mind. I mean, I'm obviously concerned because he's having these erratic movements, and it's like, you would think your first reaction is like, okay, let's figure out that type of thing. But the weighing him and the methylphenidate were in the top 5 thoughts that popped in my head first, right? So after getting him settled, I'm going out of order. Sorry. After getting things settled, when I got home Wednesday evening, before the observations that led me to want to take him to the ER, I was sitting there, like parents do, Googling and like, even though he's been taking the prescribed dosage, the terms I Googled were methylphenidate overdose, just to see what would come up. And a lot of what I was seeing was one of the things that can happen. So going back to when we're at the ER and then ultimately the hospital, after we've been admitted and we're in the hospital room, before the MRI, since they're letting him have apple juice and such, she asked, do you want to give him his normal medications? And I'm like, well, no. I mean, this is, until we know what's going on. And because I said a couple times in the ER and a couple more times once being admitted to the hospital itself, hey, could this methylphenidate be a thing? Right? And it was always dismissed, both by the ER doctors and their neurologists and the hospital pediatrician when they came around the room and all that kind of stuff. So when the nurse asked, do you want to give him, his medication, since he can take apple juice right now before the MRI up until, 2 hours ahead of time, 2 hours before that, I'm like, no, until we know what's going on or have some indication what's going on, I don't want to put any more meds on board. Right. So then fast forwarding back to where I was before, after the MRI, when he could eat and was eating, like I said, he had improved by morning. He had improved somewhat from overnight or the day before. And by, kind of early mid-afternoon, he had improved even more. It's still not baseline, but had improved more. When she came around and asked about, the afternoon medications, I basically said the same thing. I'm like, well, for the guanfacine, yeah, let's go ahead and give him that, but I don't want to give him any of the methylphenidate. And then,
and I'm thinking that you might get to this, but when you said that you Googled the methylphenidate overdose, you didn't suspect that there was an overdose per
No,
se.
yeah. That's
so
what, yeah.
maybe
True.
so were there other symptoms or other concerns that made you think, well, what would cause a buildup of this medication in his system, if that's possible?
Yeah, I mean, so some history, I guess. Last part of last year, I had a really hard time getting methylphenidate refills. So, because of that, the developmental pediatrician and I, talked about what are things can we what are the alternatives, and one was an extended release version of it, which, okay, that sounds fine to me. I mean, maybe I don't need to give him 2 doses, I give him one type of thing, right? Um, so so we tried that and it was totally ineffective, and the end result as to why is because Eric, like a lot of these KDM5C kiddos, has pretty severe constipation challenges or issues, and methylphenidate um, is metabolized, I think, in the liver, but it's absorbed through the intestines. As once you swallow it, works its way through the intestines. That's where it's absorbed. And if there's constipation issues or challenges like he has, um, it's not getting absorbed into his system. It's just sitting there in the middle of a bunch of poop in his intestines, right? So,
So is it, I just want to just to clarify, so is it sitting there not being absorbed, or is it absorbing but not moving through his system?
I mean, we
Because
have
theoretically this medication does not build up in a
true,
typical digestive tract. It wouldn't build up.
true, because it's moving through the system,
Right.
right? In his case, where bowel movements are rare and irregular, and when they do happen, not normal presentation, without going into too much detail. I think our conclusion was, especially because when we switched during the shortage of supply issues, we switched from what he was taking to the extended release version of methylphenidate. It didn't have any effect. So it seemed pretty, I mean, based on that anecdotal evidence, he wasn't even getting it. It was sitting there lodged in the poop in the intestine, and because it's kind of encased in that protective layer of poop, I guess, it couldn't get to the intestine. It wasn't making contact with the intestine walls to even be absorbed into the system.
Okay.
So I mean, that prior experience, late last year, and the fact that he had lost 6 pounds since being at least 6 pounds, recently, somehow, suddenly, because he had been eating up until Wednesday morning when he wasn't eating, and the fact that this behavior just started instantly. Well, I didn't see it that the first part of that day, but for what I'm told, started pretty much spontaneously Wednesday morning, or sometime overnight, Tuesday into Wednesday. I describe it as like Parkinson's, but I mean, Parkinson's doesn't just like, boom, now you have symptoms, right? There's a period of time where, symptoms start to present.
So did you get any answers at the hospital, or?
Yes and no.
Okay.
So blood work turned out to be okay, or okay enough for him. I mean, there was still some levels that were kind of wonky, but I think based on our conversations and kind of your experiences with Avery and such, I think that's just kind of maybe something that these types of kids, with KDM5C at least, present with. In Eric's case, they maybe indicated his system was fighting some sort of infection, but he didn't appear sick or have any other of those types of symptoms. So blood work was essentially normal. The MRI, when neurology came in to review with me, and I'll try and put some pictures in the video too, so you guys can see what I'm talking about. But the MRI didn't show anything, in their opinion, didn't show anything relevant to this issue.
This episode,
yeah. But they did see on the MRI an area of gray matter, like when babies are forming and such, the gray matter starts at the middle of the brain and works its way to the outside. This is how they explained it. It works its way to the outside, so the gray matter is ultimately on the outer part of the brain. There's a section of gray matter in the middle-ish area that didn't progress to the outside, and they said that means he's going to be is going to be prone to seizures. Which is not entirely surprising given that we suspect he had absence seizures when he was younger, and his twin brother Eli did have febrile seizures and cyanosis when he was younger. And being plugged in the KDM5C community now, a lot of those kiddos have epilepsy and seizure challenges. So, I mean, not that I wanted to hear it, but I wasn't entirely surprised. The second finding in the MRI, again, unrelated to the whole reason I brought up the ER in the first place, was that in the white matter of his brain, the inside part of the middle part of his brain, the MRI showed lesions or scars that are typically associated with people who have severe migraines, which, not great, but not bad. But in Eric's case, usually those lesions or scars show as little bright spots in the white matter of the brain, kind of tiny bright spots here and there. In Eric's case, they were like, my estimation looking at the pictures, 10 to 20 times the size. Mm-hmm. And there's multiples of them on both sides. I mean, predominantly on
the right side.
Right, yeah, I can't remember if it was right or left, but predominantly on one side, but they were present on both sides. And I'm like, okay, well, what does that mean? No idea. They have no idea what that means. So the net of it is, because he had been improving throughout our stay there, and he wasn't baseline by Thursday afternoon or evening, but because he had been improving and they didn't have any idea what other tests to run to come to any conclusions, despite me repeatedly talking about or asking about methylphenidate in particular, they decided to discharge us from the hospital. So where we're at today, and we'll do a follow-up as things progress, but where we're at today is he's got a follow-up with neurology in a few weeks, and then he's got, regarding the bright spots or the scarring and lesions in the white matter of his brain, we've got a follow-up MRI in about 6 months, and which we're only doing because neurology can't explain these lesions or scarring in the white matter. So their approach is, well, we'll do an MRI in 6 months just to see if they changed. And I'm like, and what if they have? What then? Right? So it's like,
as a parent, it's incredibly frustrating. Like sometimes, as with our original diagnosis, it feels better to have an answer or a more definite, understanding of what's going on than to end up with more questions. And that sounds like what happened is now you're kind of left with more questions than you even went into the ER. Looking
I went
for
in
answers.
for one thing, now I've got 3.
Yes, exactly. So can you give us an update on how Eric's been since? So one, did he restart the medication once he was home? And then how is he now? Has he had any more episodes?
So yes, he did restart medication, not Thursday, but Friday. So today is Wednesday. So last Friday he restarted it. And was okay Friday, Saturday, Sunday, when I saw him. And then I saw him again yesterday, Tuesday, because we had to get together for the kids' birthdays. And he was under the patio table sitting there, not swimming, not doing anything, a normal kid would be doing in that circumstance, with pizza and cake and cookies and the pool, all the things he loves, right? He chose to sit under the patio table, and it wasn't the severe head movements, but his whole body was just, it was like, again, Parkinson's. His whole body was just like, he's sitting there and his body's like doing these weird gyrations, twisting, sorts of things.
Hmm.
So I had to go back to work, that afternoon. So what I said before I left was, he takes methylphenidate in the morning and the afternoon, late afternoon, early evening. So he already had his morning dose by then. So I just said, don't give it to him tonight or the next day, which is today. So don't give it to him. Let's just see what happens, right? The challenge with that is, as I think we've talked about here, is one of the reasons he takes it is to help with impulsivity and aggression. So when he doesn't have it, and the challenge that we had late last year when we couldn't get it, was he goes after his youngest brother, Eugene, and just like sometimes it's a little, but sometimes he is like scratches the shit out of his face. And just like, he just goes after Eugene's face for whatever reason. So that's something that, knowing that that's the risk, and by saying I don't want to give him this medication, that that's the hard part, right? It's like trying to figure out what's going on with Eric and not give him this medication, because that's what I personally think it is. I'm putting Eugene at risk. Right. But, in lieu of answers, it's like, what choice do I have?
You're making the best possible decision you can with what information you have available. And unfortunately, that's the best we can do sometimes, especially with our kiddos.
Yeah.
So I guess we will have to, we're kind of playing the wait and see game to see what happens with Eric. And I know it's an incredibly stressful situation to be with our kids at the hospital. And I think you and I talked about this a little bit when I checked in with you when you were there, and said, you have to be a different kind of on, and you're worried about Eric, you're worried about being away from the house and the kids, and you're worried about, what if he can't take this medication, is there going to be something different that you can do so that you can keep, the other kids safe? And what an experience. It's not one that you ever want to repeat.
No, or wish on anyone else either, for that matter.
No, not at all. But it is interesting that his symptoms, kind of
start to
tapered
subside,
off when he stops taking the medication. So it just, it sounds like your investigation of the situation seems to be accurate, maybe. So it
Hopefully.
would just be nice if there was a way to get a more concrete response. But unfortunately, it seems like, what you were able to conclude maybe more than even what the hospital was able to do, which is
concerning.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, like I said, I when walking in the door and seeing him like this for the first time Wednesday evening, I was concerned that as soon as I saw him doing it and trying to walk around the living room, that I grabbed him, and, assuming I can get a video clip plugged in here, you guys will see it. It's me. I sat him on top of the counter in the kitchen, and just like, so I can get a closer look at him. And because I didn't know if this was going to be something that came and went, so another tip, I guess, if we're going to get into tips, aside from, the urine bag thing as soon as you walk in the door of the ER, because they want a urine sample, or may want a urine sample. It's like, you want it, just do this so we get it if he pees, right? The other tip I'd say is, especially for things that are observable visually, get video of it.
Get a video.
Because you don't know if it's going to go away, and then it's like, you're left like going to the mechanic, my car's making this weird noise. Well, it's not making the noise now. What do you want me to do about it, right? At least you can show them, what they're doing or saying or whatever's happening. So yeah, I mean, I sat him up there, and I gave him once over. Then once I kind of saw what I needed to see, I just sat there and recorded him, and then put him down on the floor so he could. His walk was different. Everything. So got all that on video, and that's what I could show neurology in the ER. I mean, they could see it happening when he was awake in the ER too, and they stood him up in the ER room, and to the extent that he would cooperate, try and walk and stuff. And by that point, I didn't say this earlier, but that reminds me, by that point in the ER that night or early morning, he would lose balance. And if someone wasn't standing close enough to grab him while he was standing, he would have fallen to the floor.
Mm-hmm.
Had gotten to that point. But yeah, I mean, if and when the stuff ever happens, collect as much evidence as you can to share with physicians when you are able to.
Mm-hmm.
Is what I'd say. And I still have no idea why the weight and the methylphenidate came to mind at the same time that evening. I mean, we don't know yet if that's the issue. I mean, we're still kind of in this wait, like, okay, he hasn't had it for 24 hours now again. Let's see how he is tonight when I see him, and then tomorrow and the next day, because I don't plan on giving it to him. Even if let's assume, hopefully he's better by tonight. I don't plan on giving it to him tomorrow either.
Right.
Or Friday for that matter. Or the weekend, right?
Yeah.
I don't plan on giving it to him so if his situation improves, I don't plan on giving it to him at all until we can figure out, what's happening and why, and if we need to resume this medicine, which I think we do, or find an alternative to it, what's the dosage? What should the dosage be given his current physical characteristics, right?
Yeah, and maybe it's worthwhile exploring his metabolism to some degree too. I don't know to what extent you can do that, but I know there are, like GI studies and things out there, because it may be beneficial to know how things are moving through his system.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about this off camera. My immediate priorities are keep them off methylphenidate and see what happens. Mm-hmm. Which, I mean, it kind of sucks to experiment with our kids and drugs, but given that the hospital and ER staff couldn't think of anything else to do, this is Dr. Dad, right? Right now, keep them off methylphenidate for now and see what happens. And if and when things improve and stabilize there, then we'll start working on the constipation, so we can get things moving through the system again. And then to your point, talk with GI about, let's see what we can do here. I mean, we've done GI before for constipation, but I think given the experiences here, we need to do some further testing or analysis on how things move through these kids' systems and or not, how long it takes, all those sorts of things. Because anytime an extended release medication comes up, these days, that's the first thing that comes to my mind,
Yeah.
So.
Interesting. Poor guy. And poor dad, poor mom. That's incredibly scary.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure.
Any other takeaways from the hospital for Eric or?
Don't be afraid to advocate for your kid.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know that I've said it on the podcast here, but I'm the dad who yelled at doctors and nurses in the middle of the NICU when Eva was born. And that's how we got out of there after 2 weeks or so, because they weren't able to feed her. Being there as long as I was, figured out how to get her to have enough liquid or formula that she could start gaining weight again. And they couldn't. Even with me making a poster like, this is how you do it, and there's pictures and all sorts of things, they still would give up and go back to the feeding tube. And they didn't want to release her, discharge her while she was on the feeding tube.
Yeah.
So it's like, I mean, push came to shove, and I'm going to cause a goddamn scene here in the middle of the NICU with all these babies around, because what option have you given me?
Yeah.
Right?
Well, and you're exhausted as a new parent.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, I'm not advocating for yelling at medical staff. I mean, they're supposed to be your partner, and they are your partner in these things. But my messaging, I guess, is don't be shy. You know your kid best, right? Yes, they've been to years and years of medical school and have years of experience, but you know your kid best. Advocate for them.
It's a good call. That should probably be our number one tip. Mm-hmm. All right. Well, I guess we'll have to stay tuned. We'll keep you guys posted on what's going on with Eric, and if you have had any similar situations or experiences, let us know. Reach out. We'd love to hear your stories.
Yeah.
And until next time,
See y'all next time.
see you later.